Welcome back to Smart Health. I'm Rachel Sanders, and today we're back with part 2 with Mollie Eastman. Mollie Eastman is the creator of Sleep is a Skill and the host of the Sleep is a Skill podcast. Her company optimizes people's sleep through a unique blend of technology, accountability, and behavioral change. After navigating insomnia while traveling internationally, she created what she couldn't find, a place to go to learn the skill set of sleep. Knowing the difference between a life with sleep and without, she has now dedicated her life to sharing the forgotten skill of sleep. In this episode of part 2 with Mollie Eastman, learn about circadian health, why it is so important for sleep and overall health, get tactical advice on how to improve your sleep, and dive into Mollie's views on the health trends that are here to stay. Welcome, Mollie, to the podcast. We're so excited to have you here and dive into part 2 of our podcast.
Very excited to be able to dive in deeper with you.
Tell me, how do you help people struggling with their sleep?
Yeah, it's a great question because one of the important things is if you're listening and if you're struggling with your sleep, we also want to discern between, are you someone that simply just hasn't prioritized sleep? You've just been busy, you got lots of stuff, it's whatever. And sleep has kind of been lowest on the rung of, order of importance or whatever, whether, it's just a circumstantial thing. Is that what we're dealing with? If that's the case, and we're trying to look and, really value sleep, making sure we're not staying up too late or, choosing to stay out longer with friends or whatever. Is it that problem, just the prioritization of it and the consistency of it? Then that can be something that, wearables, I think, can often be really, really helpful for that individual and kind of get into the game of seeing, oh, geez, I didn't realize how much that sleep was playing a role into, how I'm feeling, and I'm correlating it more and playing with that. Maybe I bring other people into the game of that. And then we can really make this kind of like a behavioral change intervention. Or are we struggling with insomnia, which is kind of more the difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, or that early morning awakening where now you're just kind of up? Is that more of your problem? So if you're dealing with that, there might be some different ways that we might approach this. So certainly for all of those people, we would like to have that consistent wake up time be part of the game, because even if you are having a struggle to fall asleep, we still want to bring in that consistency for you so that your clocks don't go all out of whack and then you're all uphill to try to be able to fall asleep at night. But then it does get more nuanced if you are dealing with, say, difficulty falling asleep. That might be indications of some anxiety or some of just some behavioral things that we need to bring in. There might be some thought pattern things. That's part of why CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy, is often so recommended. But for those that have tried CBTI, and then there are people, it's often very highly effective if done correctly, but there still are those people that don't respond so well to it. I was one of those people, overthinker, and we do find that seemingly some people with kind of that overthinking tendency, anxiety prone, that CBTI sometimes doesn't always fit the bill. And so some other areas that people can look at are things like ACTI, acceptance commitment therapy for insomnia, a little more gentle of an approach. For that, you can look at these different modalities. One book that I recommend for that is The Sleep Book by Guy Meadows, or there are some other, resources that people can look to. We've done lots of episodes on the podcast around that, kind of that sleep anxiety. Now you're starting to fixate on your sleep. And sometimes that can be a time for people to not use wearables for just a stretch of time. You might use like an old school sleep diary just to kind of sit with bringing back some control and sleep confidence into your life around your sleep. And that can even spill out into things like how you think of naps and other things. So if you're really struggling with insomnia and difficulty with that sleep pressure and having enough sleep drive by the end of the night, then that might be a time where we maybe abstain from naps for a little bit. It doesn't have to be forever necessarily, but until we get those things corrected, that might be one of the things that we would look at this differently depending on what the source point is of your sleep issues.
This is a hot topic where you hear a lot of differing opinions on this, but what is your take on supplementing with melatonin?
Yeah, it is another, the same way I mentioned the two camps for the light approach, definitely melatonin has a couple camps. I mean, there's even the high dose camp, there's the moderate dosing camp, and then there's the no melatonin supplementation whatsoever. Personally, from the research I've found and from working with so many people, I tend to fall into the middle camp, but also from a perspective of on a case by case basis. So we do certainly seem to see that there can be some benefits for using melatonin for that circadian disruption in particular. So certainly jet lag, travel. Now you're finding yourself, something happened and now you were going to bed super late. We're trying to move you a little bit earlier. Certain strategic things like that. Also, there does seem to be some evidence around different sicknesses. So when you're immunocompromised in a certain way, could there be benefits from using melatonin in kind of a thoughtful way? And then there are some theories on different groups that might benefit. There's call-outs around autism and the elderly and certain groups that could make sense. So I think that that's an area, one, that anytime we're supplementing with a hormone, which is what melatonin is, just having some reverence for that, being thoughtful about it, but also making sure that we've implored all of these other changes because I think that sometimes people are throwing in some of these, the supplementation, and yet they might be missing some of the big behavioral pieces, when I can also say supplementation can really support when these things are all done in tandem.
And it also sounds like the melatonin is a specific need versus I'm the average human who is generally healthy that just wants to do something instead of change my lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I was sharing about the light piece, I think so many of us, even I just before this call was on we do these Oura Ring audits for people. And so people will come in and we just look at their Oura Ring data and go over some things that they could bring in to improve their sleep. And even people that are really in the sleep conversation sometimes have missed some of those key things that can produce melatonin reliably, which is just the light piece. And it can be so snoozed on, but it is so powerful. And so many of us are being exposed to this blue light, not from just like oh yeah, I guess I got to turn down the brightness on my phone, boring, but really like this overarching, what we want to do is have an environment where you walk into your place in the evening, that it's either lit with red lights, candlelight, amber bulbs, Himalayan salt lamps. There is no sign of blue light in your space, and not thinking that like blue blockers will save the day. I mean, they can be somewhat helpful to a certain extent, but if you're drowning in all of that light, the problem is then the melatonin you're producing is insufficient. But that also goes into that mitochondrial piece. We're often doing things that are not supporting our mitochondria. And if you don't have, kind of proper mitochondrial function and there's this dysfunction, then good luck creating that melatonin from that source point as well.
Let's talk about your daily routines. What
Sure.
does your morning look like?
My mornings, I'm waking up. So I've moved to Austin about a year and change ago with my husband and I, and we moved here specifically, one, for the light. So being in a more southern latitude location, at least in the United States, and there's a whole podcast around that. It's just as far as health geography, where you choose to live, you have certain responsibilities based on where you're living that people might not realize. But so I didn't want to deal with some of the responsibilities in the northern latitude locations because I came from there, New York, Maine, rough winters. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I moved to a warmer location personally. I know that's not always available for everyone. So moved here. So partly for the light, but also for the community. And, just there's a lot from a health and wellness perspective happening here. So we wanted to be able to have a bit more of a, I guess you could say nightlife or what have you. So now we moved out the bedtime and wake up time closer to about 10:30 to around 6:37. So then we have enough time to be able to still be out, do our thing, but then have all that be consistent. So that's what I want people to be really thoughtful around, is the selection process, if it's available to you, to choose a wake up time that can really fit in your lifestyle and the things that are important to you at this season of your life. And then you might change that a little bit. So I will be kind of adjusting that, as we change for, kind of saying goodbye to daylight savings time or daylight savings and then moving to standard time, then often I shift a little bit with the seasons. But so now I'm waking up about the same time, getting outside so that I'm getting that light in my eyes. And if I'm being lazy, I just go out onto we have this balcony. So then I can just bring whatever, coffee, water, whatever I'm doing out there and getting that light into my eyes. But typically my husband and I like to do a morning walk. And so we're right near Lady Bird Lake. So we'll walk by along there and just getting ourselves out consistently. And then throughout the course of the day, making sure we're getting lots of bright light by day. So lots of light breaks, basically. You know, in the past, people would have those like smoke breaks and they would make sure those happened. So we want to make sure that you're getting those sun breaks, even if it's like a quickie thing that you're just kind of poking yourself outside real briefly. That sampling of the environment is important to the body. Getting some movement in, getting consistent meal timing in. That's another piece, is that I now front load my caloric load to be kind of more aligned with the rhythms of nature. So I'm largely eating when the sun is present and fasting more when it's dark out. And this has a little bit of a range. I'm not saying it's like a strong no, but as close can you make your meal times fall in between sunrise and sunset where possible, and then try to hug that sunset where you can. And then in the evening, then everything turns like red in our space, and then the temperature goes down. We might do sauna in the evening, which can feel paradoxical or counterintuitive, but it is because of that paradoxical cooling effect that happens thereafter sauna exposure. So that can further augment that dropping of your body temperature to support great sleep. The bedroom environment is totally blackout after lots of efforting. So totally blackout in there. Have motion red lights like in the bathroom. So if you have to get up and go to the bathroom at any point, then that just turns on. And then in the bedroom, I personally use the Chili Pad, the Doc Pro, to put that really cool along with the cooling temperature. And then AIM. So I'm right now testing with something called Somni, which is transcranial electric stimulation on the brain before bed, not during while you're sleeping, but around 15 minutes before bed, and plays this like little calming music, but then it's, electrocuting you, no big deal. JK.
All for sleep.
All for sleep, exactly. And so that one actually has Dr. Matthew Walker on the science as a science advisor for that company. So that's kind of noteworthy. They just were written up in Frontiers Journal for effectiveness with that, as far as what they found of its ability to improve your sleep results. They're calling it 1.5 times more effective than Ambien, 2 times more effective than CBTI, 4 times more effective than melatonin. So I'm interested in that. So testing that, so far seeing some interesting results. So I'm often testing different things throughout that course of the day. I might be using things like red light, like I've got a red light panel over here. I've got red light for the brain, intranasal red light. So that's all helpful for that mitochondria conversation. Sometimes might dabble with peptides and other things periodically, but for the most part, a lot of that is also maybe using things like CBT, or certainly elements of CBTI, but CGM, so that we're managing our glucose. We also see that that is a huge component of getting that great sleep in the evening. But then aiming to just have as much of that consistency as possible. And that is just an underrated impactor for the quality of your sleep.
And what does your phone behavior look like? Are you looking at it first thing in the morning? Do you put it down before bed? How do you approach your phone?
So I am less bullish on the phone piece, just because I found for adherence purposes, just so many people are addicted. And certainly I'm using my phone quite a bit. But I will also say, one, doing a routine kind of audit on what type of behaviors are we engaging with our, electronics, whether phone, laptop, TV, whatever. And so one, making so I have some hard and fast rules for myself with the types of things that I'm engaging in particularly the evening, because I can definitely be a ruminator or, someone that's really harping on some of these things. So I find for myself, and especially also if we're talking women of menstruating age, depending on where you might be in your cycle, you might see some of those tendencies to have more of that stress response at different parts of your cycle, and measurably so, but also seemingly in some of those behaviors. So certainly I might even be more bullish during those times, of being really mindful of the types of content that I'm taking in, whether it's from, shows that you might be watching or things that you're taking on your phone. And then certainly the bare minimum is aiming to really not have phone usage in bed, just some of those simple things that can really make that difference. But I do always use red lights on the phone with that triple click function. Some people know about it, some people don't. If you're using an iPhone, you can even just Google color filters for the iPhone and put sleep in there and it will come up, or you can reach out to me. But certainly there are these ways that you can set that up for it's a red option for free on your iPhone. If you're using an Android, Twilight app can be one that turns it all red, in alignment with potentially using the blue blockers. I like to just do all of those together so that I'm not getting any of the excitatory effects of the light. And the night shift is really pretty insufficient. I wouldn't rest my laurels on that at all. So making sure that we're not being impacted by the stimulation of the light, but then also the content. And then I do play games with people that are struggling with this, with the phone usage time. And then we can also see like of that time. So say if some people will come in and they're using their phone like 10 hours a day or something. So one, getting some of those numbers down. Two, where is the bulk of the time being spent? And is it getting too close to our evening? What are we doing on there? Are we going to emails or, stressful domains that are consistently, activating us?
Are there any popular trends that you see, whether it's in sleep or overall health and wellness, that you're staying away from right now?
Popular trends. I would just say like the quick fix mentality of sleeps, because I see so many people are like, just tell me what to take or what gadget to buy or what have you. And I really do believe that sleep is a skill, and like all skills, it's just, good luck just saying if you're learning the piano, well, what's the one thing I need to know about learning the piano? Well, you got to learn the piano. Like it's, just doesn't work like that. And I do still find, and I get it. I believe, like when I was dealing with my, breakdown around my sleep, I was desperate and I just wanted something to work, and I was frustrated and honestly like angry, panicked at different points. And I would, test something. Someone told me boil a banana and drink the whatever, you know what I mean? These crazy things that you're doing. And then you really have all your hopes set on that. And then you have another night of just crappy sleep, and not from just like, oh, I wish I had better sleep, but really nerve wracking levels of low sleep. And can just be more a lack of control over our health and well-being is how it can sometimes feel. So I certainly get the want to just have that quick fix. But as we see for sleep, I hope that we can reframe it. One of the things I like to say is that sleep is a barometer of the workability of your life. So if your sleep is not working, something about your life is often not working. So we want to peel back the layers and find out what that might be. And often it's a number of things. So if you're in a sedentary lifestyle, working from home, not moving much throughout the course of the day, I promise you that's going to show up in your sleep results. If we are, having stressful time, we just broke up with someone. I'm dealing with a client with this right now. And so the coping mechanism is to go into the kitchen late at night and get all kinds of whatever. Then that can fall into our sleep results. I mean, there are so many things that can play a role. So I hope that instead of it feeling like, I got to do all this stuff to improve my sleep, hopefully it can then be this Trojan horse effect where you're getting all these great benefits of your health and well-being from your days that then are rippling into your nights.
And as someone that is deep in this industry, what are some of your predictions for where health and wellness is going over the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure. So we're consistently seeing improvements in accuracy from wearable consumer grade tech. So that's really exciting. Even just this year, I everyone I work with is wearing the Oura Ring, but I also have a lot of people using other wearable pieces of tech, like Whoop Band is doing some really exciting things. Because I mentioned Oura, I'll just also say that they have improved some of their accuracy for their algorithm. So they just had a big algorithm update push. So we'll see a lot more improvements on that accuracy, but also the integration of AI and the ability for then this kind of personalized improvements, behavioral change improvements, and awareness. And Whoop is doing this beautifully right now, where they have an AI coach, sleep coach in there. And so you can ask certain questions and say, oh, I've noticed my HRV is dropping. And then they'll say, yes, we do see that your HRV is dropping by blah, blah, blah. And so some things that you could try. I mean, it just really helps to have it feel customized and then give some actions in alignment with that. And then you can test it and see, did those things help? Oh, and then you can come back to it and say, what are some other things I can do? Well, have you tried? Da, 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 da. So all of that's going to be really, really helpful to get into the game of this. And another piece would be different types of tech for a medical leaning. So the ability for us right now, if anyone suspects that they might have sleep apnea, then you can test in the United States for around $200 to have it sent to you. One, and I have no affiliation with these companies because they're medical devices, but Lofta, Empower Sleep are two that I often recommend that you could very quickly just get that sent to your home, sleep like you normally do, and find out, do you have sleep apnea or maybe some signs of things like upper air resistance syndrome. Sometimes that can take a little bit more delving to find that one, but can get a lot more information. And I anticipate that that will become even more readily available, because sometimes it's still a bit of a barrier to entry and you've got to go over it with a sleep doctor, and they'll do it all, virtually, which is really cool. But I anticipate that we'll see even more of that access going forward. Also different types of tracking. So radar is an area that people are playing with, so which could have applications in, say, like nursing homes, hospitals, so that people don't even have to be wearing anything, and we can use radar tech to understand a bit about their sleep quality. A lot of the mattress companies and mattress topper companies are providing some wearable or some data around the quality of your sleep just from virtue of you sleeping on the product. So different ways of getting that, and then real-time customization around things that can help. So for instance, Apollo Neuro is a band that is kind of being part of this digital therapeutics trend. And so they just released, I want to say like last month, their upgrades so that now it's dynamic. If you start going into a stressful dream or something, then their product can kick into gears and change the effects that they're putting in to kind of try to calm your body in real time. Same things apply with things like the cooling mattress toppers that can be reading your body temperature, and they will likely get better at responding. So if you start getting all hot and bothered, then for whatever reason, then we can lower the temperature dynamically. So those are some things, but then also then the integration of that, we're already seeing things like some of these wearables being linked up to things like Slack, so that as a group, then, in a startup or what have you, we can all know, oh, is Rachel sleeping really great all the time, or oh shoot, is something dropping? Can we help support her? Now, for better or worse, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing from a kind of a group dynamics perspective, but there's things of that, and then also from safety perspective. So things like knowing if your Uber driver is underslept, is that a Uber you want to get into, or would that impact their ability to operate the next day, things of that nature, and how could that spread into insurance rates and otherwise.
Well, last question, Mollie. Where can people find out more about you and more about Sleep as a Skill?
So sleepasaskill.com can act as kind of a bucket for a lot of things. The first thing is that we have a sleep assessment. So you can go and put in some of the things that you're dealing with your sleep, and then get tailored response back that can help support you right away. That can also sign you up for our weekly newsletter, and it's called Sleep Obsessions. We've been doing that every day, every Monday for over 5 years. And so you can certainly have access to that. And then beyond that, you can also have access to our courses, if you are really struggling and you want to get further support, that all these do require Aura rings to participate in our kind of group programs or one-on-ones. And then we are putting out a lot of content both on our podcast and social media as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. And thank you to all for listening to another episode of the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for the work that you're doing and for getting these kind of conversations out into the masses. It's just really fantastic. And thank you so much for having me to be a part of it.
Yes. And thanks to all of you for listening to another episode of Smart Health with Rachel Sanders.